Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hi guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Earnest James. And on my podcast, my guests and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So check out our podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even on Audible. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. Until then, see you soon. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. Hey, welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that the relationship between a father and his daughter is one of the most important relationships that a young lady can have in her life. And therefore, our mission here at the Daddy-Daughter Girl Dad Discussions podcast is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and giving our whole love and support to our dads and their daughters. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share our podcast on all of our social media platforms and everywhere that you can listen to podcasts, as well as check out our new podcast channel. We are now, we recently changed our podcast on YouTube from being a simple podcast, one podcast show, to a podcasting network where now you can find at this current moment 4 different podcasts that's all under that same channel. It's the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Again, that's Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube. So make sure you guys go and check out not only the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, but our other 3 podcasts that we have available. And just in case you ever had the mind to start your own podcast, you can get your copy of the ebook Start Your Podcast Now in only 3 steps at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com to get your copy of Start Your Podcast Now in only 3 steps, which teaches you very quickly how to get your own podcast up and running in no time at all. So make sure you guys check that out. The link is below in the description. Whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening to it, just go down to the description of the podcast episode and you'll find the link there. Okay. So now our product of the week. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase in order to support the podcast. So our product of the week this week is actually 2 of them. It is our Purpose Journal and our Purpose planner, because we believe that we all were created for a purpose, on purpose, and with purpose. And therefore, we want to make sure that each and every one of us is walking in our purpose. And as we walk in our purpose, we want to have our journal so that we can journal the places that we've been, and the things that where we currently stand, and also our planner where we can plan for our future as we continue to walk in our purpose. So make sure you guys, again, the links also to our products of the week, which is our purpose journal and our purpose planner, they are both in the links in the description below also. All right, so make sure you guys go check that out. Check out the links in the podcast so that you guys can be able to support the podcast. But today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Mr. Duncan. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. And I think people need to go over and get one of those purpose planners, because if you aren't walking with purpose, you are lost in the wood, my friends.
Definitely. And I appreciate that. And Duncan, first of all, I want to say thank you for being on, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners. And so we could just gonna have a conversation. So I'm gonna jump right in. Duncan, do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
So my name is Dunkin Bhaskaran Brown. I live just outside Oxford in the good old United Kingdom. I I do a lot of different things, and some people think the main thing I do is help people to stop drinking, but I don't really do that. That's not what I'm really about. What I do is I help people to start living. So yeah, that often involves rebalancing your relationship with alcohol, but there's so much more than that. And a lot of it has got to do with meaning and purpose, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And finding that thing that only you can do, and getting the rest of your life straight and in order so that you can put your head down and charge towards it. So that's what I do all day, kind of work wise. But really, I think the most important things in my life are my relationships. So I'm husband to a beautiful wife, father to a beautiful daughter, and caretaker of two average-looking bonsai trees.
All right. And you did mention that the work that you do as far as helping people to quit drinking. To all my listeners, make sure you guys go to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, because Duncan was a guest there on that podcast, and we talked about a lot. We really got into deep about the work that he does. So you guys make sure you guys go check that episode out. But here on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, we're on a whole nother topic, right? So we're here to talk
check
about
out that episode, because I was funny.
Yeah, right. So we're here on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast to talk about being a girl dad and talk about our daughters. So Duncan, my first question is for you. First of all, how many daughters do you have, and what are their names and ages?
So just the one, one daughter, one child. Her name is Leela Nell Bhaskaran Brown, and she was 8 about 5 weeks ago.
All right. So Duncan, in your own words, just to get started, what does it mean for you to be a girl dad?
So for me, it is weirdly kind of tied up with my sobriety and my recovery and my ability to start living the life I want to live. So I, I was drinking at a very unhealthy level, and I was miserable, and life was not going too well. And my wife and I decided to start a family. Like, when I put it like that, that does sound like quite a bad idea, doesn't it? So we did I'm sure your listeners are aware of how you start a family. We did all of that. It was quite good fun. And she got pregnant, and we were like naively optimistic. We were all kind of happy about it. But then she had a miscarriage, and that was obviously really, really hard for her. But I think, I worse than that, I just didn't help. My default reaction to stress, to difficult emotions, to the hard times was just to drink. So I kind of disappeared into a bottle of wine, and I really, really wasn't there for her. And what I found myself doing was really thinking hard about my purpose, about the meaning of my life, about what I actually wanted from my time on this planet. And I never had one of those, well lit 4 a.m. moments in looking in the mirror, suddenly realizing, oh, kind of thing. But what I did was I spent a couple of months chewing over the question, what do I want from life? Do I want another drink? Or do I want to start a family? And I've kind of spoilt the ending to this story because I made the right decision. I stopped drinking, and almost 9 months to the day after I stopped, our daughter was born. And so, her birth and my rebirth, they kind of coincide. So Leela is very symbolic of, a new part of my life, a much happier part of my life, a much more peaceful part of my life. I'm going to kind of say a much calmer part of my life. I might, like young kids, I might be stretching it a little bit. Calm is something she tries to disrupt all of the time, but she is just a part of my life that is so much better, and I feel so grateful to have reached this place and to have her.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing because I think that's a big part that as fathers, just in general, our children bring to our life is what we talked already been talking a lot about is purpose, because sometimes when we're just focusing on us and it's all about us, it's like, hey, if I want to have a drink, I'll have a drink because it's just me. If I want to go do this, I'll go do that. But once we bring a child, and especially for girl dads, because I think a daughter adds a extra element to our lives that necessarily our sons don't necessarily add, and that just makes us brings that extra purpose into it, and it's like, what, I need to do something different, because now not only do I have this new life that I'm responsible for, but it's a girl too, and although I would say our sons, a lot of times we would teach our sons to be exactly like us, but our daughters, we only want to give them the best parts of us, and so that's the extra responsibility that we have, as fathers, and so we take that responsibility a little more, maybe a little more serious, at least in my viewpoint.
No, I absolutely see where you're coming from. And I think that is really interesting. It's something that I come across a lot. One of the main motivators that help people to stop drinking is, wanting to be there for their family, to do a better job for their family. So for me, it was kind of, I suppose, my wife, and then indirectly my daughter. But I've met a lot of people who, they are either, they've had kids and that's motivated them, or their kids have got to a certain age, they've started to notice. A friend of mine, Dave, he stopped drinking when his daughter videoed him when he was drunk, and then the next morning showed him a video of himself, and he was just like, this is not the example I want to be for my daughter. And funnily enough, I was talking to a guy earlier today, and for him, he said that he wasn't really that bothered about living for himself. He'd got into quite a dark place, and he almost did not care about his own life, but it was his children, and realizing that he needed to be there for them because they needed him. I think that is such an amazingly powerful motivator. And I think if, as men, we grew up in a society which says men are tough, men are independent, men don't need support, men are not allowed to have emotions, then naturally it's a bit easier for us to just dismiss our sons and not change as a result of having sons, because we think, well, they've got to be tough. Therefore, we've got to treat them in a way that makes them tough. Whereas now, I think it's harder to have that attitude with a daughter. You have to get to grips with the idea that this little bundle of joy, you have got to protect this. That is like very basic and very primal. This is what you are here for. You are here to scare away the big bad monsters and to
Right.
look after this little girl.
Yeah, yeah, and I wanna touch on something you said about your friend who was saying that he didn't even necessarily have the will to live for himself, but definitely for his kids. And just to kind of also to my listeners, you guys can go to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast on that other podcast because I talk a lot about my own. Battle with suicidal ideation because of some things that I was going through with divorce and the death of my mom and just a whole lot of stuff. And at that point, I found myself in a dark space where I was even contemplating taking my own life. And the one thing that I held on to in the beginning to make me say, you know what, I got to stay here was my daughter, and those, my daughter's my only biological child. And so I had to put the focus on her and said, for no other reason, I have to stay here for her until I was able to pull myself, out of that space with help, of course, And so sometimes not only do our daughters and our children, should I say, give us purpose to live, but they also give us a will to live, because sometimes, we get, find ourselves, especially as men, we find ourselves in some dark spaces and might be like, you know what, I can check out, as far as I'm concerned. But when we take in consideration our sons and our daughters, we're like, no, I got to hang in there because, again, like your friend said, they need me, And so I just wanted to point that out because I'd like to share, I'd like to talk about our daughters. Definitely, this is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, but the middle part of that name is dads, and we are dads. And so I definitely like to express different concerns that dads have and that we live through, and that just happened to be one of them.
Yeah, and huge respect for you sharing that, man. I mean, it's so important. It's one of those things that is a very male problem. I mean, it's not. Women do commit suicide, but the rates are far, far lower than men. And it is a specifically male problem. And a lot of it comes back to the way we're taught to be men in the world. So yeah, it's absolutely a dad issue. So, keep plugging away, man. It's
right, right.
good work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. So we're gonna loosen it up a little bit because you did say that you guys did plan to have your daughter, which is all good. So when you guys did get pregnant, did you guys wait in order to find out the sex of the baby, or did you guys just like, you know what, let's find it out right away?
Oh, I do what my wife tells me to. I mean, she's probably yeah. That's exactly the reaction I get from her. She'd laugh, but she didn't want to find out. I did. She didn't. We didn't find out. You see, the thing is, I mean, part of me was like, oh, I really want to have a boy. Oh, that'll be a lot of fun. And it's a lot of it's like really stupid reasons, like some of the things I do are very much more male, and you kind of like I want to teach her to do the man, teach him to do the man things. But the second she popped out, it was just like love at first sight, like don't care, couldn't be bothered. And I think that's that's the reaction for most people, isn't it? Do we care what sex they are? No, we care whether they're healthy and happy, don't we?
Yeah, I think that's the most part of it. And so once we got here, how was your experience with this new baby, right? Because as they get older, we have different experiences, but that very first experience, like holding her for the first time and even bringing her home for the first time and really realizing like, okay, this is all on me. You know what I mean? So how was that experience?
Yeah, it was just like blind panic, basically. I don't think it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? But I'm sure it was buzzing around my mind. I can't believe they let me leave the hospital with this. It's like, when are the authorities going to catch up and realize that I am woefully underprepared for this? So yeah, I mean, it was difficult. It was hard work. I, she, I think the first sort of 6-8 weeks, she really did not want to sleep on her own. She was only really happy when she was sleeping on either me or my wife, and that kind of made it a little bit more difficult for us. And eventually it worked itself out. And I think for the first couple of years she slept in our bed, which I know is not necessarily the advice that you'd get from a doctor. I would caveat that with the fact that if you take strong medication or you drink alcohol or you do anything that makes you sleep very deeply and sedates you, then it's very, very bad to sleep with a child. It's not at all advisable. But neither my wife or I were drinking or taking sedative medication at the time, and she seemed more happy in our bed. So that was what we did. So once we'd actually got a kind of routine where the three of us could sleep most of the time, or at least like a semblance of sleep, that it evened itself out. But yeah, I mean, those first few kind of weeks, months, it was a bit of a blur, a bit of a kind of like, my gosh, how the heck did I get through that?
Yeah. So as they get older, we teach them different things. But one thing that I know and have learned, that as we are teaching them, they're also teaching us. Right? There are lessons and things that we are learning from them as we're trying to lead them and guide them, along the same way. And so, in your experience, what is something that you've learned from your daughter, that has changed you even for the better as a father or just as a man? Period.
So I'm a little bit obsessed with concentration and focus. I mean, at the end of the bend, I'm a writer, and what have I got? Like, all I have got is my ability to focus on, complex subjects deeply for long periods of time. So it's it's not a tool of the trade. It kind of almost is the trade,
Mm.
and I'd see a lot of things within our society that erode concentration and really, hamper that ability to deeply focus for long periods of time. But what I've noticed from my daughter and from a lot of her friends, because they're all still a bit too young to have phones, and for the most part, they have fairly controlled screen time. So they're not slaves to any electronic devices yet. And they have absolutely no problem focusing for long periods of time. When they get into something, they get deeply, deeply into it. And I guess what I learned from that is that naturally we do actually have this ability to focus. The problem is that we live in an environment which, if you're not careful, will steal that from you. And as more and more people become knowledge workers, as more and more people effectively work with their concentration span, this is going to become a serious problem, isn't it? If the environment is kind of trying to rob us of our ability to concentrate, and that's all we've got at work, then something has got to give. And I guess the good news is that I see a lot of the children that do some of the classes and the hobbies that she does, who are older and they are teenagers and they are, in that very immersed digital environment, but because they are doing the right things, they have maintained this ability to concentrate over long periods of time. So I think there is it's given me a lot of hope in a world that sometimes I think possibly has gone a bit mad.
Yeah. And so, I wanted to ask you, and I know your daughter's still young right now, but I don't think that will affect this question, because I think that once they come into our lives, they're already making a huge impact, from day one. And so, as a father, as a girl dad, what do you think will be one of your greatest accomplishments as a dad thus far?
And so all of my daughter's friends think I'm great, and I'm that is a huge accomplishment for me. And I know that in maybe 4 or 5 years, that's going to really, really annoy her. Because yeah, she'll be saying, "Oh, my daddy's so stupid. He doesn't understand. He's so old. He's got no idea about the world." And all of her friends are going to go, "No, your dad's cool. I like your dad." And
Yeah,
it's just going to really, really annoy her. So I think that that's something I've been very, very conscious of. Is you know, trying to be a part of her world by actively engaging with her friends, and that's something that I, I I see a lot of people. They don't seem enormously interested in engaging with the friends of their children some of the time. And I don't like to throw the shadows or anything, but some of the time they don't seem particularly interested in engaging with their kids. And we talk and they'll sort of say, "Oh, like, yeah, Leela would go over to their house for a play date," and they'll say something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, it was so easy, they just went and played, and I did whatever I did." And there's nothing wrong with that. It's great that they play together, but I do try and be a little bit more involved, and I try and make sure I'm actually having conversations with her friends. And it really, really shows, because when I bump into her friends when Leela's not with me, when I bump into the parents and the friends, the kids always say hello to me, and that's really, really nice, because they're on a similar sort of intellectual level to me.
right. And it's funny you say that, because I just was having a conversation with my daughter today, actually. And my daughter just turned 21 about a month ago. And one of the things that she said to me today is, like, she ran into one of her old friends and they asked about me, like, "How's your dad doing?" And she was like, "Oh, he's good," or whatever. And she was like, "He's really a cool guy." And I haven't seen this kid in years, but they remembered that, just our reactions, our interactions, should I say, from when they were a child, that they thought I was cool. And so I'm like, "Oh, cool."
Because you are cool.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So on the flip side of that, Duncan, I always share my and I don't, some people don't like to use the word regret, but I say regret just for lack of terms, right? One of my regrets as a father was early in when my daughter was small, that she had a daddy daughter dance, and I had to work, and so I said, "Well, I'll catch the next one." So I didn't take her to it, and she's 21 now, and there never was a next one. You know what I mean? And so I missed that window. And so, just in your own journey thus far as a father, what is something that not necessarily you regret, but just something that you look back now and be like, "Yeah, I could have probably did that a little different, or if I had a chance, I would probably do it this way," or something like that. Because I like to always give our dads something they can take away, from other fathers, some substance, in this journey as being girl dads.
Yeah, no, I think that the thing that I kind of regret is, through a lot of different circumstances, her choices, our choices, she ended up, going in a certain route and getting interested in certain things. And that means, by definition, because you are doing this stuff, it means you're not able to do that other things. And now we have this conversation every few months or so, and it's like, would you like to do X? And it's like, yes, of course you would like to do X, but when we get down to it, you do scouts on Monday, you do ballet on Wednesday, you do roller skating on Friday, you do um, tap and modern dancing on Saturday, and she's going to be in a show, and the rehearsals for those are on Sunday. And it's like, that's kind of getting quite tight. It's like
Yeah,
your
yeah,
hobbies are now a full-time job. So when anything comes up, it's always like, well, yes, but if we're going to do this, then it means we have to drop something else. And it's that kind of, I guess part of it is the realization that actually, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to a whole
mhm,
load of other things.
yeah,
That I think has been quite profound and deep for me, and I think it's made me try to focus a lot more on what I am saying yes to, and only doing the things that are absolutely going to drive my purpose forward that are going to really help me achieve on my mission. But for her, it means she's probably never going to be a concert pianist, and she's got lovely fingers.
Yeah, too much. See, I was listening to you was naming the schedule. I'm like, dang, her schedule's probably almost as busy as yours already.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, because on top of my schedule, I have to run around. Although I do like ballet on a Wednesday night because where it is, I have to drive there, and then the traffic is awful. So there's no point in driving home because the session's not long enough. So I get this kind of like 45, 50 minutes of just peace and quiet where I can do whatever I want. And if it's not raining, I go skating, and if it is raining, I do some reading. And both of those, fill me full of joy. So I'm not complaining too much.
Right, right. Okay, Duncan, we go go to the next segment of the podcast, which is called the Getting to the Core segment. The Getting to the Core segment, to my listeners, is a segment that is built off of the ebook, The Core Four, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father, which is the ebook that I have written. You guys can get your copy of The Core Four at ebooksbyejames.com. Make sure you guys go there, ebooksbyejames.com, so you can get your copy of the ebook, The Core Four, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father. And so, Duncan, I sent you a copy of The Core Four. And again, it's just when I wrote it, coming from my own experience as a father and some of the relationships that I've had in my life, and also watching my dad raise my 5 sisters. And I wanted to create something that was kind of at least a starting point, for young fathers and girl dads, right? And so I came up with these 4 core values. So the 4 core values is guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection. And so, of those 4 values, if you had to choose which one is the most important, definitely all 4 of them are, but which one is the most important to you to instill in your daughter, which one would that be?
Yeah, no, like kid and sweet shop, I want them all, don't I? But I think so. Guidance, I think, is enormously important, and I think we often misinterpret what that means. I think we often think, well, I need to tell my kids what to do, and the only piece of parenting advice that I ever repeat to anybody, the only piece of parenting advice that I think is worth anything at all, came from a friend of mine. And she said, your kids will ignore everything you say and copy everything that you do. And I think that's so important to realize that, guidance is primarily through role modeling. The way you show up, the way you behave is going to influence your children far more than the way you talk to them and what you actually tell them to do. And yes, it is. I taught my daughter to make origami pigs the other day, and that was fun. I really enjoyed that. But I think the far more powerful lesson is that I am prepared to sit down and carefully and diligently go through how to fold up some bits of paper, and to give her that presence and that attention. That is a far more powerful lesson, and will serve her a lot better than the ability to make origami pigs, cute as they are.
Right, right. And so, last question, Duncan. The ebook is called The Core Four because it's 4 values. But if there could be a 5th value that you could add, what would that value be?
Do you know, it would just be fun and excitement and that childlike wonder, because that is another thing that I've really learned from her. I think we get wrapped up in life, and look, I mean, I'm not here to pretend that everything in my life is roses and chocolate all of the time. Like, life is hard, and we get wrapped up in the fact that like all of those, like I just had to pay the bill for her dance classes, and it's not cheap. I mean, her dance teacher's amazing and everything. And like, if you want a recommendation for a ballet teacher in the Abingdon area, I'm more than happy to give you one. She's fantastic, but it costs money, and we were just a bit short this month. And you can just get caught up in those bills. You can get caught up in your idiot boss and his world domination plans. You can get caught up in the weather. But I think the greatest gift that you can get from your kids is that they just they're so present, and they're just going to enjoy what's in front of them, and they're just going to be amazed by things. And I think if we can really like run with that and really try and be present with them, and appreciate, yeah, actually it seems amazing for them because it's the first time they've ever come across it, but actually, you know what, it seems amazing because it is amazing. And if we can kind of build a little bit of that joy and that wonder and that sense of play and that sense of fun into our own adult lives, we will be so much richer as a result.
All right, all right. So Duncan, first of all, I want to say thank you for being on the second time, right? Or should I say thank you for being my guest on one of my podcasts for the second time. I definitely enjoyed the conversation. I want you to leave us with the last word. It could be a word of some for the daughters or some for the fathers, or however you feel. Whatever word you want to leave, I want you to have the last word, and also definitely leave your contact information where we can kind of follow you and keep in touch with you. And I'll give you a couple seconds to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys for tuning in once again to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys are following us on all of our websites and checking out our websites. We have the dealhealfulfill.org, which is my main website, which is the work that I do, because my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from your pain, and to fulfill your purpose. That is my personal mission. And so my website is dealhealfulfill.org. Make sure you guys go there. You can find out more of the work that I do, the podcast that I do, the workshops that I do, and even how to book me to come in to be a speaker or a workshop facilitator at your organization. So make sure you guys check it out. Also, make sure you check out our inspirational t-shirt line at deal2healtees.com. That's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys go there and check out our inspirational t-shirt line, which includes t-shirt merch from our podcast. You also have the opportunity to buy t-shirts with our podcast logo on it. So make sure you go there and check that out. Last but not least, make sure you guys go to check out ebooks by ejames.com. Again, ebooks by ejames.com, where you can get your copy of the Core 4, which is the Core 4 values that every daughter should get from her father, as well as a couple other ebooks that I have there, including one called From Males to Men, which is a male mentoring ebook for young boys. So I didn't forget about the boys, even though this is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys go check that out. Also, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do free virtual workshops every quarter. Well, we started doing them every quarter. Now we do them every other month. Every other month, we have a free virtual workshop talking about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, what it means to forgive, forgiveness of self, just everything regarding forgiveness. I think it's a very powerful subject, and I really enjoy doing the workshops. And I think that anyone who's interested will learn something and will find value in it. Again, it's absolutely free. You guys can go to forgivenessmission.com or just go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop held by the forgivenessmission.com, where you guys can go and check out those workshops. Again, they're 100% free and they're virtual, which means you can take it on your phone or your laptop. And, no matter where you are, you can take part in that. So make sure you guys are checking that out. All right. So, Duncan, once again, thank you so very much for being on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I want you to have the last word. So, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to get back on because I didn't want to leave the listeners hanging. If you want instructions on making origami pigs, then you should definitely visit YouTube. And of course, whilst you're there, you can go and subscribe to the Deal to Heal Podcast Network channel, and you can give all of the videos a few likes. In terms of finding out a bit more about me, if you wanted to have a look at my first book, Get Over Indulgence, which I talk about my journey from junk food and smoking and drinking into being a girl dad. I think that might interest your listeners. So I'm happy to, give them a gift of a free copy. All they need to do is put getover.uk into Google, and that will take you to a bit of my website where you can download either the PDF or the Kindle version, or if you can stand to listen to me for 3 hours and 45 minutes. Sorry about the silly voice. You can get the audio version there as well. That's just getover.uk, and that'll take you to a bit of my website. All of the other stuff that I do is on there. All of the socials are on there as well. That's just getover.uk. But in terms of a final message, I think, when we see our kids when they're very young, they look very vulnerable, but we kind of quickly realize that they are amazing and they are so strong and they're so resilient, and it's so obvious that they have everything inside them. Almost from the moment they're born, they have everything inside of them that they need to live happy and fulfilling lives. It's so easy for us to see that our kids, our children, boys, girls, whatever, it's so easy for us to see that they are enough. But we never do the maths on that one and realize it cuts both ways, that actually, as a father, you have everything inside you that you need to be an amazing father, to, walk in your purpose, to live your best life. You are enough. You don't need the things like junk food and cigarettes and alcohol. You never needed them because you are enough.
All right. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys for tuning in once again to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where our mission is to elevate the message and the voices of girl dads and their daughters throughout the world. So thank you guys once again for tuning in. And so until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else, that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.